The bell above the diner door had a tired ring to it, like a voice that had been used too many years and never once thanked. It chimed every time someone walked in from Route 17, truckers smelling of diesel and rain, nurses after the night shift, couples who didn't want the night to end yet. The chrome shone, the checkered floor gleamed, and the red stools along the counter looked like candies lined up in a row. Coffee hissed, bacon crackled, and the pie case spun slowly under a humming light. Emily was already there before sunrise, as always, tying her apron with fingers that had become quick from the repetition. She had learned to breathe through the ache in her feet, the throb in her lower back, the way anxiety pressed a hand between her shoulders and pushed. She kept a black order folder hugged to her chest like a shield. It wasn't just a job, it was the rope she clung to. Rent due the 1st, Dad's medical copay on the 10th. Her little brother Alex's field trip fee taped to the fridge with a note that said, "Only if we can, M." She'd circled the words with a heart so he wouldn't see the fear under them. Ms. Carter arrived after 7, the way a storm rolls in, dark suit, hair scraped back, tablet tucked beneath her arm. She knew every rule the franchise had ever printed and several it hadn't. She could look at a table and spot a crumb from 10 feet. She could hear a straw wrapper drop behind the counter and expect someone to bend and pick it up by the time she blinked. And when she spoke, even the coffee machine seemed to lessen its hiss. No one had seen her laugh. Some of the cooks suspected she didn't know how. "Clocked in," she said, not looking up. "Yes, ma'am," Emily answered. "Specials are posted, receipts loaded, coffee's fresh. I called in the order for the bread. Eddie is late," Ms. Carter said, scanning the dining room like a lighthouse beam. "Again, cover his section, and if you see anyone waiting more than 90 seconds, you leap. We're not running a charity." Emily lifted her chin. "Yes, ma'am." The breakfast rush was a wave that didn't crash as much as it kept rising. Emily slid between booths like a dancer in a pattern no one else could see. 4 coffees to the construction crew. Egg whites, dry toast, fruit cup to the woman in scrub pants, her eyes half closed in the kind of tired you earn by saving lives. Extra syrup for the twins whose pancake faces were already grinning chocolate chips. Every please, every thank you, every here you go sweetie fell from Emily with a softness that made people straighten, made their shoulders drop. She never looked rushed, even when her mind was counting tickets, calculating totals, tracking refills and fry times and whether the dishwasher was backing up again. But then a delivery man knocked a crate into the back door frame. Someone burned a batch of hash browns. Eddie stumbled in from the rain, muttering about a flat tire, and dropped his apron by accident into a sink full of gray water. A family with a stroller took the big corner booth and wanted everything in halves and no butter, and the baby started crying as soon as the plates arrived. On an ordinary day, Emily would have pulled the room back together like a seamstress drawing a thread tight. But this morning, the world felt tilted. Let one thing slip, and suddenly the knife slid off the cutting board with a clatter that made her jump. The coffee filter tore, the order chits curled damp at the edges from the humidity seeping through the old back door. "Table 7 has waited 12 minutes, Ms. Carter said, appearing at Emily's elbow like a shadow that could talk. "Why, the kitchen's in the weeds," Emily said. "I comped their coffee. I checked on them twice." Excuses are confetti," Ms. Carter replied. "Pretty useless, and a mess for someone else to clean up. Fix it." A flush crept up Emily's throat. She swallowed it, moved faster, smiled anyway. By noon, the bell had rung itself hoarse. The rain turned from a patter to a roar, sucking light from the front windows until the neon sign was the only pink in the world. A couple near the counter argued in whispers that grew louder, then grew silent when the woman saw Emily glance over with concern in her eyes. A boy in a varsity jacket sat alone with a milkshake and a textbook he wasn't reading. Old Mr. Lehane, who came every Tuesday for chicken noodle soup and exactly 6 saltine crackers, told Emily his daughter had visited for the first time in months. "Sat right there like she never left," he said, tapping the formica. "You can't know how much that meant." Emily touched his hand and meant it. "I can," she said. "I really can." She thought of Alex, the way he used to run to the door when she got home, holding homework and questions and a need that felt like purpose. Lately, he didn't run. He kept his headphones in and said, "Hey," without looking up because he knew she'd be back out again by dusk, off to the evening shift at the grocery store to make the numbers not lie. The thought sent a twist through her chest that she hid behind a laugh when the cook cracked a joke about the rain. At 2 o'clock a tall woman in a slate suit swept in, shaking droplets from her umbrella like a dog casting off a river. She was younger than Ms. Carter but had the same sharpness around the mouth, the same posture that said she had never once touched a greasy plate. The little brass name tag read, Regional. Emily saw the way Ms. Carter stiffened, the small lift of the chin, the way the staff, without looking at one another, all began moving as if to choreography. The hum of the diner raised a key. Surprise audit, the regional manager said brightly, which was the kind of brightness that came with a switchblade hidden inside it. Pretend I'm not here. Then she took a clipboard from her bag, flipped it open, and began the kind of pretending that left everyone counting the length of their breaths. Emily wasn't afraid of audits. She was afraid of how Ms. Carter turned them into a stage where other people's errors became a performance of her power. If a straw wrapper was spotted under the counter, Ms. Carter would call a name across the room and point, as if she were directing police to a suspect. If a guest asked for more water and it took 61 seconds, Ms. Carter would look at the clock and murmur something to the regional manager and make a red mark on her tablet. At 3:12, it happened. A rush of to-go orders came in while the grill man was on break. Emily grabbed boxes, filled cups with ice, called out substitutions, answered the phone with a smile in her voice, handed a regular his pie to take to his wife who'd just come home from the hospital. She turned back to the counter, reached for a tray, and her elbow brushed the edge of a root beer she'd set too close to the bar. It tipped. It didn't fall all at once. It slid in a slow, terrible arc, the world pausing long enough for Emily to say, "Oh," as brown fizz rolled like a wave over the lips of the glass, down onto the counter, and toward the floor. The root beer hit the tile in a splash that made the baby in the corner booth squeal like it was a game. The varsity jacket kid flinched backward. Mr. Lehane lifted his cuffs with a neat gesture. The soda spread toward Emily's shoes as if the day wanted to make the mess exactly hers. Ms. Carter's heels clicked twice. She stopped with the red arrow of the neon sign shining right past her shoulder, and pointed. Not at the glass, not at the pool growing across the checkerboard, at Emily. Unacceptable, she said, voice low and bright with anger. In front of a regional audit. You don't even know how to place a drink. Do you understand how little it takes for this kind of service to ruin a reputation? I'll clean it, Emily said quickly, stepping back for the mop. It was your failure, Ms. Carter said, louder now. Conversations wilted. The regional manager looked up from her clipboard, pen hovering. Customers are waiting because you can't manage a simple tray. A trained monkey has better balance. And you, she stabbed the air with her finger, you stand there like a child about to cry. The words did not feel like words. They were hands, and they pushed. They pushed Emily back into every night she'd held her father's hand while he apologized for being sick, apologies that made her furious because he had nothing to be sorry for. They pushed her into the hallway of the apartment where the landlord had said, "One more late payment and you guys are out." They pushed her into the bathroom light at 2 in the morning, practicing a smile she could wear over exhaustion like makeup. A boy at the counter whispered, "Geez," under his breath. The baby stopped playing with her spoon. A little girl at the next table, maybe 6 or 7, small fingers around a doll with yarn hair, pulled on her mother's sleeve and asked, in a voice clear as bells, "Why is that lady being mean?" Everything inside Emily shook. The mop handle rattled against the tile in her grip. She could have taken it. She had taken it, so many times she couldn't count, swallowing hurt like glass. She could clean, she could smile, she could apologize into the floor until it gleamed. But the child's question hung in the air, true and simple as gravity. Why is that lady being mean? Emily set the mop aside. She felt, absurdly, like she was placing something heavy down that she'd been carrying since she was 16. She wiped her hands on her apron, left a dark stripe across the fabric, and looked at Ms. Carter. The fear did not vanish. It stood with her, but something stood with the fear, too. "I made a mistake," Emily said, her voice steady and soft in the way of someone who has finally chosen the words that belong to her. "It's a soda. I'll clean it. I'll replace it. I'll comp the table if you want. But you don't get to talk to me like I'm not a person. Not anymore." Not in front of strangers and not in front of a child. The diner held its breath. Ms. Carter's face did a small, startled thing, like a bird changing direction mid-flight. I come here every day and I try, Emily continued, and now she wasn't trembling. She was telling the truth, and the truth made a path in front of her. I try when my feet ache and I try when my dad's doctor calls in the morning with a bill I didn't expect and I try when the bus is late and I still show up early. I try when you don't see it. But I am not your punching bag. I am a person. She looked toward the little girl and managed a smile that wasn't pretend. I am a person. For a heartbeat, it was just rain on the windows and the low hum of the refrigerator. Then Mr. Lehane cleared his throat in that way older men have when something matters. Good girl, he said, a blessing disguised as two small words. The varsity jacket kid nodded like applause he hadn't learned how to do in public yet. A couple across the room clinked their water glasses softly, as if toasting to a new law. The regional manager stood. She didn't raise her voice. Ms. Carter, she said, may I speak with you in the office? Ms. Carter opened her mouth, closed it. Something light color grazed her cheeks. She looked at Emily, and there was anger there, but also something else, something brittle at the edges. Something that had never been challenged and didn't know how to not shatter. She turned. The office door thudded shut behind them. Emily bent, finally, to clean the spill. Two sets of hands were already there. The varsity jacket kid, cheeks pink. I spilled one like that my first day at the burger place, he murmured. Manager made me cry in the walk-in. You, don't deserve that. Thank you, Emily said, meaning it so much it softened her whole face. The little girl's mother came over, too, pressing some napkins into Emily's hand. You handled that with more grace than I would have, she whispered. If my daughter grows up to be like you, I'll have done something right. The floor was clean in a minute. Emily refilled the soda, carried it to the table with a calm that was not an act, and refused to let them pay for it. When she turned, she saw him. A man at the far end of the counter who had been there during lunch, quiet, observant. He had the kind of face that didn't need to announce itself. Soft laugh lines, eyes that watched the world carefully. His suit wasn't flashy, but it fit the way good things fit, like they were made with respect. He tipped his head to her. You all right? He asked. I will be, she said, surprising herself with how sure it sounded. He slid a business card across the counter with 2 fingers. My name's Daniel Brooks, he said. I own 3 cafes in the city. We've been looking for a front-of-house lead who can read a room and hold it together when things go sideways. I just watched you do both. I don't usually recruit people at diners during rainstorms, but, well. He smiled, a little sheepish. If you ever want to talk, call me. No pressure, no promises, just talk. Emily stared at the card like it had dropped from a future where she slept 8 hours and laughed without counting pennies afterward to see if she could afford it. She tucked the card into the pocket of her apron like it might dissolve if she held it too long. Thank you, she said. Her throat felt tight. Thank you. The office door opened. Ms. Carter came out first, followed by the regional manager. There was a new carefulness in Ms. Carter's walk, as if she'd been told to cross a floor not yet dry. Staff, the regional manager called in a voice that was clear but not unkind. Quick note. She waited until the room's attention tilted toward her. I've recommended some leadership training for this location. Effective immediately, we'll be implementing a protocol for how we address errors, privately, constructively, and with respect. If anyone has concerns going forward, my email is on the board. She pinned a paper there, deliberately. Thank you for your work in a difficult rush. The quality of service, especially from our servers, has been noted. Her glance touched Emily like a hand squeezed in passing. Ms. Carter's jaw flexed. She didn't look at Emily when she said, back to work. But the ground under everything felt a fraction different, an inch truer. Evening crept up with the kind of quiet that doesn't announce itself. The rain lightened to a silver veil. The neon sign buzzed tiredly back to its soft pink. Mr. Lehane left $1 more than usual and patted Emily's arm. The varsity jacket kid stayed long enough to finish his chapter. The little girl drew a sun on a napkin with winked rays and handed it to Emily. For you, she said. 'Cause you're brave. I'm not really, Emily whispered after they left, but she tucked the napkin into the pocket with the business card, which is a thing brave people do even when they don't believe they are. At 9, the last of the dinner crowd drifted out. The cook turned off the grill and propped the back door. The night smelled like wet pavement and the faraway trace of cut grass. Emily wiped the counter in slow circles, not because it needed it, but because sometimes your hands need a small job so your heart can finish its larger one. Ms. Carter approached. Without the regional manager near, her shoulders eased a fraction, but the control was still there, wound tight around every muscle. She stopped, didn't point, didn't snap. For a moment, two tired women faced each other under the lights of a place designed to make other people feel better. "You embarrassed me, Ms. Carter said finally, but the words were flat, a script she'd used for so long it had lost its power. "I told the truth," Emily answered. "I'm sorry if it embarrassed you. It wasn't meant for that. I just couldn't carry both the job and the way you spoke to me anymore." Ms. Carter's mouth thinned. Something that might have been regret flickered there and blew out. "Don't be late tomorrow," she said. "We open at 6. Emily looked at the clock. She pictured her father's pill organizer and the notice on the fridge and Alex's field trip form and the long hallway between here and the version of her life where she didn't cry in the bathroom with the water running so no one would hear. She looked at the little girl's son drawn on a napkin, a small bright thing that fit in a pocket and also in a future. "I won't be here tomorrow," she said, and the words felt like stepping off a curb you'd been too afraid to step off for years, only to find the street wasn't as far down as you thought. "I'm grateful for the start this place gave me. But I'm done being smaller than what I am to make someone else bigger." Ms. Carter stood very still. "You're quitting?" Emily nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Without another job lined up." "I have a conversation lined up," Emily said, and tapped the pocket where the card rested. "And I have myself. It's a start." Ms. Carter's eyes flicked to the pocket and back. For a breath, Emily saw the younger version of the woman in front of her. Hungry, competent, maybe humiliated once too, and deciding never to be the one humiliated again even if it meant becoming the one who humiliated. Emily didn't pity her. She didn't hate her either. She wished, wildly, that life had taught them both a kinder language earlier. "Turn in your apron, Ms. Carter said. Emily untied it. The knot slid loose, the fabric warm from a day lived hard. She folded the apron the way her dad had taught her to fold t-shirts when the laundry money was short and neatness had to stand in for newness. She set it on the counter. She didn't ask to keep the name tag. She didn't need proof she'd been here. Outside, the streetlights threaded a necklace down the block. The rain had stopped. Puddles presented the world back to itself, a little softer around the edges. Emily stood under the awning for a long minute, letting the night cool the heat of her face. She breathed. She felt the shape of hope in her chest. Fragile, yes, but not imaginary. She walked toward the bus stop. Halfway there, she turned around, impulsive. Through the diner window she could see the red stools and the pie case and the place where the root beer had tried to write a story different from the one she chose to tell. She touched the napkin sun in her pocket. On the bus, an older woman with paint on her jeans sat beside her. "Long day?" the woman asked. "Yes," Emily said, and then, surprising herself, added, "Good day." The woman nodded as if good days and hard days often wore the same shoes. "I teach art at the community center," she said. "We've got a class on Saturdays for adults who never got the chance to try. First one's free. You look like someone who might have some pictures trapped inside." Emily looked down at her hands, the little burns on her knuckles from the grill, the tiny scars from glass and box cutters. She thought of the notebooks under her bed, the words she'd written in the pockets of the night when the world was quiet enough to hear her own voice. She thought of pictures trapped inside, and the way sometimes a stranger opened a window. "I do," she said simply. "Thank you." That week, she met Daniel for coffee in one of his cafes. The place had big windows and plants crawling down bookshelves, and a sign that said, "Be kind or be quiet," which made her laugh until she almost cried. They talked for 2 hours, not about quotas and charts, but about people. About how the front of the house sets the rhythm of a space. About making it easier for the single mom with 2 kids to navigate a Saturday morning without feeling like a problem. About training staff to see, not just to serve. He didn't offer the job until the end. "Start as shift lead," he said. "Learn the system. Grow as fast as you want as long as you keep that way you have of making a room feel safe. I'll pay for the management classes if you want them. No strings. Emily said yes. She called her father, who tried to pretend he wasn't crying. She hugged Alex, who pretended he wasn't, either, and waved the field trip form at her until she signed it with a flourish that felt like blessing. She slept a full night and woke to a morning that didn't sit on her chest like a weight. Months later, a woman in a black suit came into the cafe where Emily was now assistant manager. The suit looked expensive. The woman's hair was scraped back tight. She ordered a latte like it owed her money. Emily recognized her before she wanted to. Ms. Carter's mouth opened in surprise that turned, horrifyingly, into shame. Emily, she said, then faltered. Ms. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. I came in because I heard this place was well run. I didn't know you were here. I'll go. You don't have to, Emily said, and meant it. The world was too small to carry old wars everywhere. We make good lattes. Sit. I'll bring it to you. When she set the cup down, Ms. Carter stared at the art in the foam, a heart, or a leaf, depending on what you needed it to be. You look different, she said. Rested, Emily said, with a small smile. Ms. Carter tried to return it and couldn't quite. I took the training, she blurted, words like rocks she had to get out of her mouth. After that day, the regional, she wasn't wrong. I've been trying. I'm glad, Emily said. She was surprised to find that she meant that, too. Ms. Carter nodded once. If you ever want a letter of recommendation, she said awkwardly, I owe you that much. I have what I need, Emily answered, and patted her own chest gently. But thank you, Ms. Carter lifted the cup. It's good, she said. Your place is good. It's ours, Emily corrected softly, because the staff had built it together, and because good things felt truer shared. Business grew. Emily designed a pay what you can chalkboard for leftover pastries after 7 p.m. She started a Sunday morning hour where the music was low and the lights were softer for people with sensory sensitivities. She kept a little jar by the register with a handwritten label that said, Field Trip Fund, and the first time she handed a stack of permission slips to a teacher with a wink, she felt that click inside you get when something lines up with who you are. On a bright autumn afternoon, the diner on Route 17 put a sign in its window, under new management. Emily paused on the sidewalk across the street and watched customers move in and out. The bell still chimed, stubborn and hopeful. She hoped someone inside was catching the sound and thinking, be kind, be kind, be kind. That evening, back at the cafe, the little girl with the yarn-haired doll came in with her mother. The girl had grown an inch and lost a tooth. She ran to the counter when she saw Emily. You're the brave lady, she announced to the whole line, which made the whole line smile. I'm the lady who spilled a root beer, Emily said, laughing. And then you were brave, the girl insisted. She drew another sun on a napkin, more careful this time, and handed it over. For your wall. Emily taped it near the espresso machine, right where she'd see it on the hardest mornings. Sometimes courage was a speech. Sometimes it was a step toward a bus with pockets full of napkins and a business card that felt like a map. Sometimes it was a cup slid across a counter with foam art glowing on top like a leaf or a heart or the beginning of a new story. When the lights clicked off at closing, Emily stood in the quiet and listened to the room breathe. She thought about the day in the diner, the sting, the spill, the finger pointed at her like an accusation and how, somehow, it had turned into a direction sign. She thought of her dad's laugh over Sunday pancakes now that he felt well enough to make them again, of Alex's text that read, field trip was sick. Thanks Em, with too many exclamation marks to be anything but joy. She thought of Ms. Carter taking a training in the small, hard places inside people that sometimes softened when someone else drew a boundary. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the espresso machine ticked as it cooled. Emily locked the door and slipped the keys into her pocket, fingers brushing the napkin sun as if to make sure it still burned. It did. It would. She headed home under a sky so clear it looked washed. The world wasn't easy, but it wasn't indifferent, either. It noticed when you stood up. It noticed when you were kind. It noticed when you chose to be a person in a place that wanted you to be a function. And on the days it didn't, Emily had learned to notice herself. That, it turned out, was the beginning of everything.